Welcome back. I hope you did well in your Chapter 5 test. Now, we last learned about the United States and North America. This chapter, we will be heading north to Canada. So what do you know about Canada? If you live in the U.S., you might know something about it. Maybe you visited Canada or maybe you've lived there. What first comes to mind when you think of Canada? Maybe you think of cold or maple syrup. Maybe you think of their flag. Maybe you think of hockey. Do you know what this is on my desk? This is a hockey stick. It's actually a goalie stick. The end part is made of wood, at least this one is, and then this part is plastic. Have you ever played hockey? I remember as a kid, my brother and his friends would play hockey in our driveway. Not on ice though. I haven't played hockey and I haven't skated on ice either. I sometimes can trip over my own 2 feet, so skating on ice, I would probably fall down every time. Now, Canadians invented hockey, and hockey is the most popular sport in Canada. Let's watch the video Just a Taste to learn more about this sport.
Hello everyone, I'm Chef Bernard and welcome to Just a Taste. If you love waffles or pancakes like I do, then I have just the recipe for you. Today I'm making my homemade syrup. I love it. What can I say? When it comes to syrup, I'm just an old sap. Get it? Sap? Anyway, great traditional maple syrup is rare. I mean, it doesn't just grow on trees. Oh wait, it actually does. Speaking of which, I've actually already drilled the trees and collected my sap. Now, we're gonna bring that sap to a boil. You know, making syrup always reminds me of Canada. They're kind of famous for it because they have so many maple trees. In fact, there's a hockey team in Toronto that's called the Maple Leafs. If you don't know, hockey is this awesome game where you skate around on ice and try to hit this thing called a puck into the other team's goal using a special hockey stick. Canadians are really good at ice hockey because they invented it. Probably because the game was a great way to break the ice. Although, you don't want to actually play on broken ice. Not if you don't want to have a nice day. An ice day, right? For real though, they did invent it. It gets really cold in certain parts of Canada. So, they came up with the great idea of hockey to use those frozen ponds for something fun. And fun it was, and is. It's a way for people from so many different ethnicities within the country to come together with a common interest. Free hockey lessons and leagues are even offered to new immigrants as a way to help them get to Canada. It's such a big part of the country's personality, even children learn to skate, not long after they learn to walk. I, myself, don't know how to ice skate. I was going to learn, but I got cold feet. Like all places, Canada is changing. There are even less expensive sports that people in Canada can play, but hockey still holds strong as a huge part of their culture. It's even on their money. Hockey is considered Canada's national pastime and has 7 teams in the NHL. That stands for National Hockey League. But its popularity has moved out past its borders. The United States, for example, has 24 teams in the NHL. Man, all this talk about hockey has me excited to watch a game with a plate of waffles. So let's get this syrup finished, and you can do the same. What? No way. Not again. Man, time sure does fly. Sorry, everyone. Looks like we're out of time. I wanted to do one more pun about ice for you, but it slipped my mind. Seriously though, we're out of time. So just boil your sap a few more hours and, I guess, check online for the rest of the steps. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.
Hockey is such a cool sport. I personally really like watching hockey, and my favorite team is from Philadelphia. But fun fact, hockey wasn't the only sport that a Canadian invented. Know what other sport was invented by a Canadian? Well, that would be basketball. Basketball was invented by James Naismith in 1891. He was a Canadian graduate student in Massachusetts who was asked to create a game that would keep students occupied during winter. He grabbed a soccer ball and a peach basket, just like you see in this image, and the game of basketball was born. Now, Canada is a beautiful country full of islands. It actually has 52,000 islands. And it's also full of mountains like these ones and Banff National Park. And plains. Look at that beautiful sunset over the Yukon Territory. And here we see a train passing through the Bow Valley in Alberta. Now, Canada is a vast country and it has the second largest land area in the world. Can you guess which country has the largest land area? Well, that would be Russia. Well, even though it has a large land area and an even larger coastline, the population in Canada is relatively small. Canadians are able to lead a relatively comfortable living, and they export a large quantity of raw materials. Canada usually is ranked high on a list of favorable countries. Canada has 10 political divisions called provinces and 3 territories. But what is a province? A province is a region of a country, and it is a tract or district. These areas are really similar to U.S. states. You'll get the opportunity to label these provinces and territories after the lesson. Now, we'll be looking at the physical geography of Canada, and we'll be talking about regions, landforms, bodies of water, climates, and natural resources. We'll be only getting through regions today. Before we start to look at regions, do you have any idea what prominent earth-shaping process would have created the landforms of Canada? Well, a lot of the area was formed by glaciers, and we will learn specifics about that in our next lesson. Now, there are 7 physical regions in Canada. They include the Canadian Shield, the Western Cordillera, the Arctic and Inuit Mountains, the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Lowlands, the Interior Plains, the Hudson Bay Lowlands, and the Appalachian Mountains. Let's first start out by learning about the Canadian Shield. But what is a shield? Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. So a geographic shield is a large area of exposed rock. But think about that shield with a Canadian maple leaf on it. How might an area of rock also be like that shield used to defend somebody? Well, both of them are hard and stable, and that's the same as this area of Canada. This is a geographic stable region made of rock. And another reason why it's called the Canadian Shield is because it is shaped like an ancient shield. The Canadian Shield is the largest region of Canada and is a solid mass of hard rock, and it makes up half of Canada's land surface. Now, the geography of this area tends to be relatively uniform and it's pretty flat. It also is rich in minerals like silver and gold. And when we talk about the Canadian Shield, we're talking about this area right in here. Now let's look at the Western Cordillera. But what does the word Cordillera mean? It is a chain of mountains. And that chain of mountains stretches from Alaska all the way to the southern tip of South America. This area covers most of British Columbia, Yukon, and a sliver of Alberta. That area would be right in here along the Pacific Ocean. Now, do you notice the coast mountains that are located right here? Let's do a quick map comparison. Now, do you remember the last time when we talked about the coastal ranges on the western coast of the United States? They're located right here. Do you think that the coast mountains of Canada are the same chain as the coastal mountains of the United States? Well, if they aren't a part of the coastal ranges, what range do you think they could be a part of? They would be a part of the Cascade Mountains that are in the United States. Just like in the United States, we also have the Rockies that extend into Canada. Some of these mountains are so steep that they do not have any trees that grow on them, but they sure are beautiful. This area includes some of Canada's most beautiful scenery, and it includes a number of their famous national parks. This includes Banff National Park. Look at this. I would just love to sit there all day and read a good book. But maybe you'd want to climb that mountain. And this area also includes another Canadian national park. And what's really awesome about this trail is it's accessible to people of all different fitness levels. If I ever get to Canada, I am definitely stopping there. But speaking of mountains, let's move along and look at the Arctic and Inuit Mountains. This area consists almost entirely of Nunavut, but it does include a small piece of the Northwest Territory. So we'd be talking about this area right in here. And it also includes one of the Earth's greatest archipelagos. But what's an archipelago? Well, that's an island group. These areas are mainly flat with some rolling hills, and their area is fairly large. 9 of them exceed 10,000 square miles. The largest island in Canada is Baffin Island. It's the 5th largest island in the world, clocking in at over 195,000 square miles. And you even see some mountains in this image on the island as well. Now, let me show you a creature that lives on the island that I think is really cool. Any idea what we're looking at? It's the Arctic woolly bear caterpillar. Look at him, he's so cute. And he's really cool because when he's in his caterpillar state, he can survive temperatures as low as negative 70 degrees Celsius, which when you convert that to Fahrenheit, it's about negative 94 degrees. That's so cool, and he will actually be frozen solid, so he spends most of his time just waiting for it to get just a little bit warmer. Now, the Inuit Mountains dominate the northern islands, and a large portion of these areas are covered in snow and ice. You can see that mountain range right here. What do you notice about these mountains? Well, they look pretty rugged, and of course you see snow. It looks pretty sheer at the bottom too. But do you notice the lack of vegetation? The vegetation in this area is severely limited because the ground is permanently frozen. Now, let's look at our next region. We'll be heading from the mountains to some of the lowlands. Let's first start with the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Lowlands. This area covers a small part of southern Ontario and Quebec, and it extends from Quebec City to Detroit. So that area would be right in here. The St. Lawrence River runs right along here. This area contains Canada's major eastern cities. We see Quebec City here. I love that building in the background. And also Montreal. And also Toronto. Now this also includes over 50% of Canadians. That's such a large number for nearly 50% of Canadians to make their home here. Why would such a large amount of people live in this area? And again, we're talking about this area right in here. Well, it's right along the river, which means easier access to trade with other countries. It's right along the US as well, which would help with trade. And this area is located in the south, so it has a better climate. This area is so important to Canada, and later this chapter, you'll be completing a map involving major bodies of water and major cities in this area. But for right now, let's take a look at some of the top spots of one of the major cities, Toronto.
Hey there, travelers! The world is full of historically and culturally significant parks, museums, and landmarks. Join me today as we take a visual tour through one city's top spots. Toronto, Canada, the capital city of Ontario, with a whopping population of over 2 million. This thriving metropolis will whet your appetite for adventure. Our first stop in this historically rich city is Casa Loma. Built in the early 1900s, this European-style castle is known for its Gothic architecture. The exterior and landscaping are truly fit for a king. But that's only the beginning. Don't miss out on touring each of the 4 levels of this estate. Your jaw will drop as you get a taste of what life was like for the wealthy elite. The Royal Ontario Museum is sure to wow you with its sleek, modern architecture. Though it was established in 1912, in 2007 this museum got a huge crystal upgrade. You'll be engaged with its ever-changing featured exhibits and galleries. A more specialized museum is the Hockey Hall of Fame, located in the heart of downtown Toronto. In the works since the 1940s, the Hockey Hall of Fame at Brookfield Place now proudly displays the fascinating history of hockey from around the world. You can participate in multimedia exhibits and even get your picture taken with all of the trophies. History and shopping combine at the St. Lawrence Market. The building is more than 150 years old, and before the Great Fire was used as government offices and a prison. Now it's been named the world's best food market. You can find everything from antique dealers to fresh fish and vegetables. Like most major cities, Toronto can get uncomfortably crowded. So the city built The Path, the world's largest and most innovative underground walkway. It's a great way to connect you to pretty much anywhere you need to go in the city. Path also has over 1,000 shops to choose from in more than 50 buildings. And of course, no trip to Toronto would be complete without visiting the CN Tower. This massive tower, one of the tallest in the world, is 181 stories tall. That's 1,815 feet and 5.5 inches, to be exact. You can look down on the city through the glass floors or strap on a harness and attempt the daring edge walk. Toronto, with its record-setting landmarks, rich history, and delicious markets, is sure to win over your heart and stomach. So if you're ever in Toronto, be sure to visit some of these top spots.
Now, I don't know about you, but I got a little freaked out when they showed the video about the glass floor and the edge walk. No way could I do that. I do not like heights. Now, the interior plains lie between the Canadian Shield and the Canadian Rockies. And if you look at our map, we have the interior plains are right here. This area was where we had the Canadian Shield, and then this is where we had the Rocky Mountains. This area is called the breadbasket of Canada. Now, what do we mean when we call something a breadbasket? Well, what we mean is that this area provides the food for the country, and it can provide the food for the country because the terrain is really good for growing crops. Now, it also contains a flat plain and a few low hills. You can see that flat plain and some of those low hills here in an image from Saskatchewan. Now, let's look at the Hudson Bay Lowlands. It contains the land south of the Hudson Bay, and it includes a couple of islands. So that would be this area right in here. It includes the area south of the Hudson Bay, and it also includes the northeast corner of Manitoba. It's also going to include the islands in the northern part of the bay, which is a part of Nunavut. This area also contains swampy lowlands and coastal plains. You can see some forest around James Bay, which is also located in this area. Now, some of this area also lies close to the Arctic Circle. Do you notice all of that ice on the ground? Well, what kind of animals do you think would live around this area? Well, that would be polar bears, and while they look really cute, they can actually be very dangerous. And sometimes there's walruses too. They kind of look like grumpy old men, kind of remind me of my dad a little bit. And there's even some beluga whales that live in the Hudson Bay as well. The last region we are going to be talking about is the Appalachian Mountains. This mountain chain should already be familiar to you because we just covered some of it in the last chapter. These mountains are an extension of the mountains in the U.S., and this includes the areas of northeastern Canada, specifically the areas of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland Island, and eastern Quebec's Gaspé Peninsula. So we're talking about the area right in here. So it's really just those islands and then the peninsula. These are composed of low, rocky mountains, hills, and valleys. So what have we learned about today? We talked about the different regions of Canada, like the Canadian Shield, which is the largest area in Canada, the Western Cordillera, which is a chain of mountains that stretches from Alaska to the tip of South America, and the Arctic archipelago and Inuit Mountains, which consist almost entirely of Nunavut. We learned about the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Lowlands, which contain many large cities, and nearly 50% of the population lives in this area. We talked about the interior plains, which is considered the breadbasket of Canada. And we mentioned the Hudson Bay Lowlands and that it contains a couple of islands and the different animals that live in the region. And we talked about the Appalachian Mountains, which are an extension of the range in the U.S. Next time, we'll be looking at the physical landforms of these areas and the earth shaping process that form them. See you next time.